Oh, hello. How is everyone today? Welcome back to the Reading Revolution with Ariel Miller and our continued read along of Stargirl. Check this baby out. I totally forgot yesterday to whip it out, but in case you do not know what this beautiful instrument is, this is called a ukulele that I definitely do not know how to play. But the reason why I wanted to take it out and show it to you was, as described in the text, it does look like a mini guitar, right? And it is indeed a ukulele. Don't ask how I actually own one of these, but alas, I do. So with that, I'm going to leave this baby out for today's read along. And I'm going to continue reading to us today. So for those of you just tuning in, yesterday we started our text, excuse me, we started our text Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli, and we left off on the middle of page 14, which I believe is actually chapter 3. So if you are interested in following along in the text, you can follow along in the PDF document that I have left in my Instagram bio, as well as in my Facebook page and my YouTube channel, and you can find it anywhere and everywhere. So with that being said, we're going to continue reading. So let's just like a quick recap from yesterday. I know yesterday I left this up here because I wanted to come back to this today as we were talking about the concept of nonconformity. So we will come back to that today in our discussion. But also yesterday we met our protagonist, which is our main character, Stargirl. We also met our other protagonist, Leo Borlock, his best friend, Kevin Quinlan. We also met Hillari Kimble. And it's the beginning of school, and this new girl has shown up who had been previously homeschooled, and her name is Stargirl Caraway. And she's somewhat of a mystery to the students at Micah because they can't quite quantify her. They can't put their finger on her, and they don't understand her because she's so herself. So let's continue reading. We left off in chapter 3 on the mid to top of page 14. And this is where Kevin and Leo are talking about Hot Seat and how they wanted to get Stargirl on Hot Seat. And I had left off yesterday's reading by discussing the foreshadowing of the fact that Kevin was balking. He wasn't sure that he wanted to have Stargirl on the show. And he said, quote, "I don't know, I had some vague feelings, but the only one I could identify was a warning. Leave her alone." In time, Hillary's hypothesis, so called by Kevin, about Stargirl's origins gave way to other theories. She was trying to get herself discovered in the movies. She was sniffing fumes. She was homeschooling gone amok. She was an alien. The rat she brought to school was only the tip of the iceberg. She had hundreds of them in her home, as big as cats. She lived in a ghost town in the desert. She lived in a bus. Her parents were circus acrobats. Her parents were witches. Her parents were brain-dead vegetables at a hospital in Yuma. We watched her sit down in class and pull from her canvas bag a blue and yellow ruffled curtain that she draped over 3 sides of her desk. We saw her set out a 3-inch clear glass vase and drop into it a white and yellow daisy. She did and undid this in every class she attended 6 times a day. Only on Monday mornings was the daisy fresh. By last period, the petals were drooping. By Wednesday, the petals began to fall, the stem to sag. By Friday, the flower hung down over the rim of the water vase, its dead stump of a head shedding yellow dust in the pencil groove. And I just wanted to share that beautiful set of detail. We talked about this earlier in the text about Stargirl's characterization. But I want to remind you, readers, when we read, remember we have that critical cap on, that wonderment. Now, when I close my eyes and I think of this description, the 3 sides of her desk, the 3-inch clear vase, the little daisy that she drops into it, and that over the course of the week, the daisy starts to wilt and die because it's obviously not attached to the plant, I see it so clearly. Imagery is powerful. It's what brings the writing to life. It's what gives the story a pulse. We have such a strong sense of the type of Stargirl, or type of person that Stargirl is, by her extreme attention to detail. The fact that she takes such great pride in this little private desk space that she creates in every period speaks volumes about the kind of human she is. And keep that in mind as we continue to read. We joined her as she sang happy birthday to us in the lunchroom. We heard her greet us in the hallways and classrooms, and we wondered how she knew our names and our birthdays. Her cotton headlight eyes gave her a look of perpetual astonishment, so that we found ourselves turning and looking back over our shoulders, wondering what we were missing. She laughed when there was no joke. She danced when there was no music. She had no friends, yet she was the friendliest person in school. In her answers in class, she often spoke of seahorses and stars, but she did not know what a football was. She said there was no television in her house. She was elusive. She was today. She was tomorrow. She was the faintest scent of a cactus flower, the flitting shadow of an elf owl. We did not know what to make of her. In our minds, we tried to pin her to a corkboard like a butterfly, but merely the pin went through and away she flew. In our minds, we tried to pin her to a corkboard like a butterfly. So, coming back to what we talked about yesterday, corkboard, like a butterfly. That word like connecting the two items, the corkboard and the butterfly. And we put bugs, I don't, but some people do. They put bugs on corkboards and then they put them in glass cases so that they can save them and study them. But in this case, he's making this comparison, Leo's making this comparison of Stargirl to this bug that we want to put on this display so we can figure her out, so that we can try to understand her. This comparison, this type of figurative language, this literary device, is review from yesterday, and it's a brum-bum, it's a simile. Kevin wasn't the only one. Other kids pestered me. Put her on the hot seat. I lied. I said she was only a 10th grader and you had to be at least a junior to be on the hot seat. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. I observed her as she were a bird in an aviary. One day I turned the corner and there she was, coming right at me, the long skirt softly rustling, looking straight at me, surrounding me with those eyes. I turned and trotted off the other way. Seating myself in the next class, I felt warm, shaken. I wondered if my foolishness showed. Was I myself becoming goofy? The feeling I had when I saw her around that corner had been something like panic. Then one day after school, I followed her. I kept at a safe distance, since she was known not to take the bus. I expected the walk to be short. Well, it wasn't. We trekked all over Micah, past hundreds of grassless stone and cactus front yards, through the Tutoroi shopping center, skirting the electronics business park, around which the city had been invented a mere 15 years before. At one point, she pulled a piece of paper from her bag. She consulted it. She seemed to be reading house numbers as she walked along. Abruptly, she turned up a driveway, went to the front door, and left something in the mailbox. I waited for her to move off. I looked around. No one on the street. I went to the mailbox and pulled out a homemade card and opened it. Each tall letter was a different painted color. The card said, "Congratulations." It was unsigned. This reminds me of something that we read earlier in the book. If you recall, our main character, Leo, he received something for his 14th birthday. What was it that he received for his 14th birthday? Let me see. It was a necktie. He received a porcupine necktie. Was there a card? Was there some sort of indication of who it came from? Something to think about. I resumed following her. Cars pulled into driveways. It was dinner time. My parents would be wondering. She took the rat from the bag and put it on her shoulder. Riding there, the rat faced backward, its tiny triangular face peeking out of her sand-colored hair. Excuse me. I could not see its beady black eyes, but I guessed it was looking at me. I fancied it was telling her what it saw. I fell further back. Shadows crossed the streets. We passed the car wash and the bike shop. We passed the country club golf course, the biggest spread of green grass until the next golf course in the next town. We passed the Welcome to Micah sign. We were walking westward. There was us and the highway and the desert and the sun blazing above the Maricopa Mountains. I wished I had my sunglasses. After a while, she veered from the highway. I hesitated, but then followed. She was walking directly into the setting sun, now a great orange perched atop the mountain crests. For a minute, the mountains were the same dusky lavender as her sand-skimming skirt. With every step, the silence grew, as did my sense that she had known all along that she was being followed. Or more, that she was leading me. She never looked back. Wait for it, wait for it. She strummed her ukulele. I'm not going to strum and I'm not going to sing like Stargirl for you, but I'm going to go ahead and do this to add some effect for you. She sang, I could no longer see the rat. I imagined it was dozing in the curtain of her hair. I imagined it was singing along. The sun lay down behind the mountains. Where was she going? In the gathering dust, the sombraros flung shadows of giants across the pebbled earth. The air was cool on my face. The desert smelled of apples. I heard something. A coyote? I thought of rattlesnakes and scorpions. I stopped. I watched her walk on. I stifled an impulse to call after her, to warn her. Of what? Then I turned and walked, then ran back to the highway. Something I want to just discuss is the beautiful language that we encounter while reading. The sun lay down behind the mountains. So much nicer than saying the sun set, the sun disappeared, the sun vanished, the sun lay down. And I think it's so important that we continue to remember that authors employ words for a reason. We should, as people, be using words for a reason. But in this case, what I love is the sun laying down. It personifies the sun. So sun is not alive and the mountains are not alive. Arguably, yes, there's animals and trees, but they're not sentient beings like we are. So when we use a term like the sun laying down, it personifies, it gives lifelike, human-like qualities to something that is inanimate. And it's such a beautiful way to give life to the writing. And it enhances what we say, the sun laid down. So much more powerful than disappear, vanish, dissolves. Before we move on to chapter 4, I'm going to give you a purpose for reading both chapters 4 and chapters 5. I want us to think about societal ideals. This book addresses the concept of nonconformity. I want to just be very clear, if you've noticed, I haven't used the word theme. And you'll see as we continue to delve further into our conversation that when we discuss the concept of theme, that theme transcends one word, which is a phrase, because nonconformity is really just a subject. It's not a theme per se. Now, there's more to this, but I want you to keep in mind, how does society and its ideals, expectations, and stereotypical typecasting impact our lives? Now, that's big for a lot of my viewers that might be younger out there. I want you to keep in mind and maybe ask someone who you're watching this video with that maybe what do those really cool, fancy, big words mean? Or we can go ahead and look them up. But how does society's expectations, I want you to think about the expectations of society. How does it impact us and our perceptions, how we think of others, and how we lead our lives? So that's the purpose for reading as we continue to move on through chapters 4 and chapters 5. At Micah Area High School, Hillari Kimble was famous for 3 things: her mouth, the hoax, and Wayne Parr. Her mouth spoke for itself, most often to complain. The episode that became known as Hillari's hoax took place in her sophomore year when she tried out for cheerleading. Her face and her hair and her figure were right enough, and she surely had the mouth. She made the squad easily. And then she stunned everyone by turning it down. She said she wanted to prove that she could do it. She said she had no intention of yammering and bouncing in front of empty bleachers, which was usually the case. And anyway, she hated sports. As for Wayne Parr, he was her boyfriend. Mouth-wise, he was her opposite. He seldom opened his. He didn't have to. All he had to do was appear. And by his job, appear. By both girls' and boys' standards, Wayne Parr was, well, gorgeous, but he was more and less than that. In terms of achievement, Wayne Parr seemed to be a nobody. He played on no sports team, joined no organization, won no awards, and earned no A's. He was elected to nothing, honored for nothing, and yet, though I did not realize this until years later, he was the Grand Marshal of our daily parade. I'm going to read that again because I want you to think about it. And yet, though he And yet, though I did not realize it until years later, he was the grand marshal of our daily parade. Again, this time it's another form of comparison. It is not a simile, it's a different type of comparison. Grand marshal of our daily parade. We're going to revisit this later on in chapters 4 and 5, but I want you to think about our reading for purpose when we talked about societal ideals and expectations. We did not wake up in the morning and ask ourselves, what will Wayne Parr wear today? Or how will Wayne Parr act today? At least not consciously. But on some level, below awareness, that is exactly what we did. Wayne Parr did not go to football and basketball games. And by and large, neither did we. Wayne Parr did not ask questions in class or get worked up over teachers or pep rallies, and neither did we. Wayne Parr did not much care. Neither did we. Did Parr create us, or was he simply a reflection of us? I didn't know. I knew only that if you peeled off one by one all the layers of the student body, you would have found at the core not the spirit of the school, but Wayne Parr. That's why in our sophomore year I had recruited Parr for the hot seat, and Kevin was surprised. Why him? Kevin said. What's he ever done? I mean, what could I say? That Parr was a worthy subject precisely because he did nothing? Because he was so monumentally good at doing nothing? I had only a vague insight, not the words. I just shrugged. The highlight of that hot seat came when Kevin asked Parr who was his hero, his role model. It was one of Kevin's standard questions. Parr answered, GQ. In the control room, I did a double take. Was the sound working right? GQ. Kevin repeated dumbly. Gentleman's Quarterly, the magazine? Parr did not look at Kevin. He looked straight at the camera. He nodded smugly, and he went on to say he wanted to become a male model. His ultimate ambition was to be on the cover of GQ. And right there, he posed for the camera. He had that disdainful model look down pat, and suddenly I could see it. The jaw square as the corner of a cover, the chiseled cheeks, the perfect teeth and hair. That, as I say, took place at the end of our sophomore year. I thought then that Wayne Parr would always reign as our grand marshal. How could I have known that he would soon be challenged by a freckle-nosed homeschooler? Keep in mind our focus as we move on to chapter 5. The call came from Kevin on a Friday night. He was at the football game. Quick, hurry, drop whatever you're doing now. Kevin was one of the few who went to games. The school kept threatening to drop football because of low attendance. They said ticket receipts were barely enough to pay for electricity to light the field. But Kevin was screaming on the phone. I jumped in the family pickup and raced over to the stadium. I bolted from the truck. Kevin was at the gate, windmilling his arm. Hurry! I threw the $2 admission at the ticket window and we raced for the field. See better up here, he said. Yanking me into the stands, it was halftime. The band was on the field, all 14 of them. Among the students, it was known as the world's smallest standing band. There weren't enough of them to form recognizable letters or shapes except for a capital I. So they didn't march much at halftime games. They mostly just stood. In 2 rows of 7 each plus the student conductor. No majorettes, no color guard, no flag, and rifle girls. Except this night. This night, Stargirl Caraway was on the field with them. As they played, rooted in their places, she pranced around the lemon grass, or the grass in her bare feet, and a long lemon yellow dress. She roamed from goalpost to goalpost. She swirled like a dust devil. She marched swiftly like a wooden soldier. She tootled an imaginary flute and pogoed into the air, knocking her bare heels together. Their cheerleaders gaped from the sidelines. A few people in the stands whistled. The rest, they barely outnumbered the band, sat there with, "What is this?" on their faces. The band stopped playing and marched off the field. Stargirl stayed. She was twirling down the 40-yard line when the players returned. They did a minute of warm-up exercises. She joined in. Jumping jacks, belly whoops. The teams lined up for the second half kickoff. The ball perched on the kicking tree. She was still on the field. The referee blew his whistle, pointed to her. He flapped his hand for her to go away. Instead, she dashed for the ball. She plucked it off the tree and danced with it, spinning and hugging it and hoisting it into the air. The players looked at their coaches, the coaches looked at the officials blew the whistle and began converging on her. The sole policeman on duty headed for the field. She punted the ball over the visiting team's bench and ran from the field and out of the stadium. Everyone cheered. The spectators, the cheerleaders, the band, the players, the officials, the parents running the hot dog stand, the policemen, me. We whistled and stomped our feet on the aluminum bleachers. The cheerleaders stared up in delighted surprise. For the first time, they were hearing something come back from the stands. They did cartwheels and backflips and even a 3-tier pyramid. Old-timers, or as old-timers got in a city as young as Micah, said they had never heard such a racket. The next home game, more than 1,000 people showed up. Everyone but Wayne Parr and Hillari Kimble. There was a line at the ticket window. The refreshment stand ran out of hot dogs. A second policeman was called in. Their cheerleaders were in their glory. They screamed up at the bleachers, "Give me an E!" The bleachers screamed back, "E!" We were the Electrons in honor of the town's electronics heritage. Their cheerleaders ran through all their routines before the first quarter was over. The band was loud and peppy. The football team even scored a touchdown. In the stands, heads kept swinging to the edges of the field, to the entrance, to the street lamp lighted darkness behind the stadium. The sense of expectation grew as the first half came to a close. The band marched smartly onto the field. Even they were looking around. The musicians did their program. They even formed a small, lopsided circle. They seemed to linger on the field, drawing out their notes, waiting. Finally, reluctantly, they marched to the sideline. The players returned. They kept glancing around as they did their warm-ups. When the referee raised his arm and blew his whistle for the second half to begin, a sense of disappointment fell over the stadium. The cheerleader's shoulders sagged. She wasn't coming. On the following Monday, we got a shock in the lunchroom. Bleached blonde and beautiful Mallory Stillwell, captain of the cheerleaders, was sitting with Stargirl. She sat with her, ate with her, talked with her, walked out with her. By sixth period, the whole school knew Stargirl had been invited to become a cheerleader, and she had said yes. So, I want to ask a question, but I want you to listen to this first. People in Phoenix must have heard us buzzing. Would she wear the usual skirt and sweater like everyone else? Would she do the usual cheers? Did all the cheerleaders want this, or was it just the captain's idea? Were they jealous? Cheerleading practice drew a crowd. At least 100 of us stood by the parking lot that day watching her learn the cheers, watching her jump around in her long pioneer dress. So a few things that we need to kind of address here. So now Stargirl's a cheerleader. I asked you to think about when we started chapters 4 and 5, societal ideals and expectations and stereotypical typecasting and expectations and things that we're supposed to kind of believe and follow and endorse. And I say supposed to, and I roll my eyes. Why is it significant that Stargirl's now been invited to become a cheerleader? What does society, and I say quote, think, believe, or associate with being a cheerleader? The lead-in to Stargirl's invitation is bleached blonde and beautiful Mallory Stillwell. And I want you to draw your own conclusions of society. At least in American Western society, the expectation in our culture is that beauty is blonde, tall, and white. And what we know as educated, critical, informed participants in society, that's not the case. You can have any color hair, be any body size, body type, and any skin color and still be beautiful. And the converse of that is also true, is you can be tall, blonde, and not attractive. And because true beauty comes from here, right? And we see that as well with Stargirl and the description of that she wasn't pretty, she wasn't ugly, she was just normal. But we're seeing this emergence, this personality, this intangible, unquantifiable energy that for whatever it is, everybody wants to be around her. So now she gets invited to be a cheerleader. Why is that significant? What does this mean for Stargirl? Has she now leveled up? Is she now considered popular? Because what do we associate with popular? We associate popular, beautiful cheerleaders. That's a societal stereotype. Now, should this be the case and should this be true? The answer is no. But is this something that as a reader and as a participant in society, in film and TV and other things for analysis purposes, it's important to understand that this transition is important because it catapults Stargirl from this relative obscurity into like, oh, no, we're accepting you. Remember, we talked about nonconformity. Cheerleaders all wear the same uniforms. Would she wear the same uniform? They all do the same routines. There's a sameness with being a cheerleader, right? You do the same things together at the same time. So I want you to wonder and think about, well, how is Stargirl going to fare during this? Because she's a nonconformist. How is it going to be for her falling in line with everyone else? Still to us, she was not truly a cheerleader, but Stargirl dressed like one. She continued to strum her ukulele and sing happy birthday to people. She still wore long skirts on non-game days and made a home of her desk or her school desks. When Halloween arrived, everyone in her homeroom found a candy pumpkin on his or her desk. No one had to ask who did it. By then, most of us had decided that we liked having her around. We found ourselves looking forward to coming to school to see what bizarre antics she'd be up to. She gave us something to talk about. She was entertaining. At the same time, though, we held back because she was so different. We had no one to compare her to, no one to measure her against. She was unknown territory, unsafe. We were afraid to get too close. Also, I think we were all waiting to see the outcome of an event that loomed larger and larger with every passing day. The next birthday coming up was Hillari Kimble's. Dun, dun, dun. And that's the end of chapter 5. Question that I'm going to leave you with before we move on to chapter 6. And we are going to read chapter 6 because it is good. Why do you think people are so afraid of different? We're not going to discuss it. I just want to throw it out there into the universe. I'll ask it again. Why do you think people are so afraid of different? Why do people hate on different? Why do people fear it? And maybe think about your personal experiences in your life. Think about times when you have met someone that you couldn't really quite understand and you were like, they are so weird. So I want you to think about, why do we fear different? Why do the students at MAHS fear her? Stargirl, that is. Chapter 6. So Hillari's birthday is coming up. What do you think is going to happen on Hillari's birthday? Is Stargirl going to sing to her? Do you think Hillari's going to want to be sung to? How would Hillary react? Hillari herself set the stage the day before. In the middle of lunch, she got up from her table and walked over to Stargirl. For half a minute, she just stood behind Stargirl's chair. Silence everywhere except for tinklings in the kitchen. Only Stargirl was still chewing. Hillari moved around to the side. "I'm Hillari Kimble," she said. Stargirl looked up and smiled. "I know." "My birthday is tomorrow." "I know." Hillari paused, her eyes narrowed. She jabbed her finger in Stargirl's face. "Don't you try singing to me, I'm warning you." Only those at nearby tables heard Stargirl's faint reply. "I won't sing to you." Hillari gave a satisfied smirk and walked off. From the moment we arrived at school the next day, the atmosphere bristled like cactus paddles. When the buzzer sounded for first lunch, we leapt for the doors. We swarmed into the food lines. We raced through our choices and hurried to our seats. Never had we moved so fast, so quietly. At most, we whispered. We sat, we ate. We were afraid to crunch our potato chips, afraid we might miss something. Hillari was first to enter. She marched in, leading her girlfriends like an invading general. In the food line, she smacked items onto her tray. She glared at the cashier while her friends scanned the crowd for Stargirl. Hillari stared ferociously at her sandwich. Wayne Parr came in and sat several tables away, as if even he was afraid of her on this day. Stargirl finally came in, but she went straight to the food line, blithely smiling as usual. Both she and Hillari seemed unaware of each other. Stargirl ate, Hillari ate. We watched. Only the clock moved. A kitchen staffer stuck her head out of the conveyor belt and called, "Trays!" A voice barked back, "Shut up!" Stargirl finished her lunch. As usual, she stuffed her wrappings into her paper bag, carried the bag to the paper-only can by the return tray return window and dropped it in. She returned to her seat. She picked up the ukulele. Boom. We stopped breathing. Hillari stared at her sandwich. Stargirl began strumming and humming. She stood and strolled between the tables, humming and strumming. 300 pairs of eyes followed her. She came to Hillari Kimble's table and kept on walking right up to the table where Kevin and I sat with the hot seat crew. She stopped, sang happy birthday. Except it was Hillari's name at the end of the song, but true to her word of the day before, she did not sing it to Hillari, she sang it to me. She stood at my shoulder and looked down at me, smiling and singing. I didn't know whether to look down at my hands or up at her face, so I did some of each. My face was burning. When she finished, the students burst from their silence with a wild applause. Hillari Kimble stomped from the lunchroom. Kevin looked up at Stargirl and pointed at me and said what everyone must have been thinking. Why him? Stargirl tilted her head as if studying me. She grinned mischievously. She tugged on my earlobe and said, "He's cute," and walked off. I was feeling 9 ways at once, but they all ended up at the touch of her hand on my ear until Kevin reached over and yanked on the same earlobe. "This keeps getting more interesting," he said. "I think it's time to go see Archie." We are ending today on at the end of chapter 6, so chapter 7 for tomorrow, on page 29 if you were following along in the text. Before we conclude for today, reviewing a few things that we talked about. We did talk about reviewed similes again, personification. We also talked about the importance of listening or reading as well for a purpose, and considered how societal ideals and expectations impact our lives as Stargirl transitions into becoming a cheerleader. I want you to think about this for today and into tomorrow, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, is this juxtapositioning, if you will, of Hillari Kimble. Juxtapose means next to each other. Of Hillari Kimble and Stargirl. They're these two contrasting characters. I want you to think about the two contrasts. Why would we have a character like Hillari Kimble alongside Stargirl, and how is that significant? So think about that for tomorrow's reading, but we'll pick back up tomorrow on page 30, chapter 7. Reading Rebels, it has been a pleasure and a joy sharing the Reading Revolution with you today. I am eagerly looking forward to continuing our wonderful journey into the written word tomorrow. Have a great day. Love you, mean it. Mwah! And get yourself a ukulele.